So when was it that you got into this stuff?
Well, I've been in this for about 5 years.
You're very good. Very, very good at this. You're hitting the higher note. Yeah.
I've started the recording.
Oh, great. It's happened already.
Yeah. I did a
Puppet making class or something.
No, I had an idea for a puppet soap opera because I thought puppets are very wooden. You know, they're just one face, and that's like soap opera characters. Yeah. So they would make a good soap opera, and so we produced a soap opera of like 4 or 5 episodes.
Rob, I want to have Muppets in my next trailer, not the Deep Regrets one.
Honestly,
yes.
I'm looking for a creator to like build me a little demon puppet.
Well, before you go, if you want, I'll get them so you can see them because they're properly made and everything like that, but they're not. They're obviously completely.
You didn't make them yourself.
No.
Okay. Well, give me your source.
They're proper. Yeah. Like there's someone who actually.
I did puppetry.
You did?
As a thing, so I would love to be part of the thing.
Like puppeteering, you mean?
Puppeteering thing. So
I do need puppeteers.
I can do a puppeteer. Yeah.
I mean, this is how I hire
Kermit
people
voice.
for my trailers. It's like. Yeah. Hi, are you doing anything today?
is there a thing of
over here?
We're using Muppets, so I want the kind of ugly people, because pretty people is for when I'm using live action things. I'm doing Muppets, so I need the ugly people so they get a chance to be in your trailers, right?
Oh, come on, don't be so hard on yourself.
Someone needs to be. Welcome to the Ancient Robot podcast. I am Dougal, run Ancient Robot Games. Joined here by my co-host.
I am Gelb, his co-host.
We are co-hosts together as co-host, and we're joined by a special guest, Judson Cowan.
Hello. That's me.
Yes, thank goodness it's you. I couldn't do it. Did you do it, Gelb?
No. Passable, but no. The American thing is the closest.
Accent,
closest.
They're right, much closer than I am. We generally talk about board games, RPGs, board game design, all things that we're kind of interested in, and some of us are fantastic at. So, Judson, would you like to...
No, I'm not fantastic at games.
There is a big...
Sorry, was that the question?
No, you would you like to introduce a little bit about yourself and within this crazy industry that we're in?
Yes, yeah, of course. So, hi, I'm Judson Cowan. I am a board game designer, but I've only been a board game designer for maybe 4 or 5 years, and I've only been a published board game designer for maybe 4 of those. Done 2 kind of board games. I've done Hideous Abomination, which I've done 2 editions of, which is like a family-friendly monster builder game. And then I recently did Deep Regrets, which has not yet released. It is on boats, on its way to all the different warehouses at the moment, and should be in retail within a couple of months, which is very exciting. It's a hard fishing game, and I'm a solo creator as well. So like I do everything end to end. I design the game mechanics and all of the structure of the game, and then I also do all the illustration and graphic design and everything. So I kind of have end-to-end control on things,
which is just amazing, by the way. It has been great to see. I mean, when I first saw Hideous Abominations and saw the art, and I think I probably asked you the first time, so who did the art for you? And to find out that you had done the art, the design, and the mechanics and absolutely everything attached to it was mind-boggling, to be honest. How do you find it as a solo? So a lot of people who we speak to have a lot of board game design experience who create stuff, and they usually are the designer of the game, and they hire an artist or they hire a graphic designer or multiple people, and they get some more people involved in it when it comes to distribution. It's usually quite a larger team effort, at least than people think it is when they start designing a game.
Yeah.
As someone who does it all themselves, how do you think your experience differs from a lot of other people?
I feel like it's kind of a competitive advantage, if I'm honest.
Really?
Because I now know a lot of board game designers and board game artists, and I stay in touch with people that are doing Kickstarters and things like that, and watch what their process looks like. And it's so much easier for me to move through the design of a game than it is anyone else, because I'm not waiting on passing emails back and forth between artists and going through rounds of iterations. I can do everything simultaneously. So I'm thinking about the design of a game. I'm also thinking about what it will look like and what the UX will look like and what the trailer is going to be for it. Like I mentioned it just briefly a second ago, I'm already thinking about puppets for doing for the Personal Demons, my next game, for the trailer for that. Like I have this big vision that everything kind of comes into, and I can move at a much faster velocity, I think, than most developers. So I try to take advantage of that.
Do you find that, so would you call yourself a controlling person when it comes to these things? Because a lot of designers who I speak to, they will have these back and forths, but it is very much a back and forth. It's not, the artist has done this, that's great, we're done. It's like, no, I want it to be a little bit like this. Having that second person there to talk to about it and to kind of bounce those ideas off isn't really there with you.
Yeah.
Do you find that this is like a benefit more than anything else? Because you get that pure like idea creation thing completely from end to end? Or is it like, sometimes I wish someone could tell me how to do this a bit differently?
I mean, there's pros and cons with anything. Like I come from the advertising world. So I worked in the ad industry and design studios, advertising agencies, and then in-house at a place called Skyscanner for about 20 years. And I'm accustomed to working with a really big team of people, and I enjoy working with a really big team of people because I'm an extrovert and I get energy from doing that. So when I chose to go into full-time board game design, that was my biggest reservation, was that I'm going to be working in a room by myself at home because I'm a solo team. And it was a bit strenuous on my mental health, I would have to admit. So like I know some other, everybody else here knows them as well, but for those that are listening, there's a team also based in Edinburgh nearby here called Erie Idle that are doing a game called Old King's Crown. And they had office space set up nearby. And I was like, can I just move in with you? And they were very accommodating, which is great. So like I now share studio space with people that are in the same discipline, which is like working in a design team or something. And I can get exactly what you're talking about there, that like bouncing ideas off of people without necessarily needing to play. So it's exactly the same thing without having to need, there's not too many cooks in the kitchen situation where I actually have to, like, we don't approve one another's work, but it's like, is this stupid? Am I being stupid? Can you just look at this really quickly and give me like a quick feedback on it? And even like Rob sitting across the table from me here is working on games as well, and he's nearby. So I try and find ways to create a ghost team of people that I think of as like,
that you can ignore entirely.
Coworkers, yes.
Yeah. When they have stupid ideas, you can be like, well, this isn't your game. That's great.
But I do miss working in a team. Like I wouldn't be opposed to, I like the speed I'm able to move at, and I like being able to like control my vision from end to end, but I do miss working with other creative people and getting feedback from them and giving feedback from them. That's another thing that I really miss from like the corporate world, is supporting and mentoring and helping to grow young talent. So I'm trying to find ways to stay involved with that now in the board game community.
Being very generous with your time as one of those ways. Certainly, I've taken advantage of that benefit, motivation, whatever you want to call it, from you for a while now. So I appreciate that. The question I had though was, working in the same space as the Old King's Crown guys, for example, you see two people with that dynamic. They're not only bouncing ideas, but there's also probably a give and take and a co-creation of something. Do you think that you'd want to maybe collaborate with either an artist or a designer, or to co-design a game in the future? Or because of how you've gone through, like, are the pros so outweighing the cons that you're like, nah, I don't really want to do that?
It feels like diversification at this point, kind of. Like, I think I'll always enjoy making my like visions come. It feels like an artistic endeavor more than anything. I've joked that like I use board games as an excuse to draw lots of weird monsters, and that's partially true. Great, but it's like creating, it's crafting an experience, which is a very cool thing. It's like it feels like an auteur process when you're able to do it all yourself. But I would be very interested in, I've never done art for someone else's game. I think that could be a kind of a cool thing to like try and, because I'm accustomed to working to a brief. Like I don't have a problem accepting feedback. I've been doing that for 20 years. So I'm like, okay with like just, kind of changing based on whatever whoever it is that's creative director or art director, whatever their vision is, trying to help them achieve that. So I'm doing a thing with Button Shy right now, who I've always admired as a company. And they got in touch with me just kind of saying they were cribbing some notes from my sheet from the Deep Regrets Kickstarter. And I was like, please, absolutely, go ahead. By the way, I love your company. If you ever want to do something together, let's do it. And they were like, yes, of course. So that's been a cool process because I'm kind of handing off to them, and there is some back and forth there. So I came up with a concept for the game and then passed it off to them, and they're kind of doing the heavy lifting as far as play testing and development goes, which is really cool. And it means that I have this other thing kind of happening in the background that doesn't require as much of my attention, which is nice because doing a thing end to end is all consuming. Yeah. Like, it takes me an entire year of just like full-time work to get a game from idea to market.
And do you find that you can focus on multiple games at once, or are you more kind of in favor of like there's one primal thing that's taking up a majority of the time. As soon as that's done, we can move on, but not before.
This is another kind of weird thing I think is probably a superpower that I don't think of that way, is that I can focus on and complete a thing, where I hear so many people talking about like, oh, I have like 20 games I'm designing. I will have several ideas in mind, some that are kind of developed. Yeah. And but I always have one thing that's like, this is what I'm completing and this is where my focus is going to be until it's done. And then I can come back to these other things. So yeah, I have a lot of ideas, but I do like to complete things.
Yeah. So with that like one at a time thing, do you have that sense of like joy of completion when a project is over? Or is it, well, I had these two things that were waiting for me to finish this one, I guess I'm moving on to that, without having that kind of like actual pause and true like deep breath out sort of side of the things?
You get both.
Okay.
Like, yeah. So when you complete a thing, yeah, that feels great. It's amazing. Like, oh, this thing's finally off of my plate. I do sometimes bounce onto other projects in the middle of something because I have, kind of an ADHD personality where like, and I really like that about my job where I have so many things I have to do. I can be proactively procrastinating all the time. Like there's so many things I need to do. I can just stop. Like I can look into fulfillment and figure out what's going on with my games for a day, or I can, work on the rule book for a day, or I can start doing, inking the art or whatever, and just get wrapped up in that and then be like, oh, I need to come back to this other thing I forgot I need to do. Or I can be like, oh, I'm going to draw some demons for this game today and just get wrapped up in that for a bit and then come back to something. So I like being able to bounce around between projects and still be moving things forward. Yeah, like sure. It's still productive. I'm not... It is productive procrastination in the definition.
When you're doing, especially when you're focusing on the core creative process, you're on your own. What kind of role do you take feedback in as part of your process? Because I at least from the outside looking in, you're certainly compared to me, you're a very well put together dude. Whenever you put something, whenever you put something out there, there is a reason why you're putting it out there. It feels very intentional. Whenever I've been involved with playtests, I watch you watching the game in a very particular way. You have very specific questions. It's not like well, what the hell did you think? It's not a kind of a broad sense of feedback that maybe you're looking at, and maybe that's just because I've been exposed to it at a later, but your new
you
one.
Missed all of the what did you think?
Yeah, but the new Demons game that you're working on, and you might think that's a relatively early stage. I don't think that's a very early stage personally. Like I thought that was a fantastic experience. But I guess my question is, do you include feedback, like broad feedback from a certain set of people, right, at different times? Are there different types of people that you are engaging with at different times throughout your process?
Yeah. So I guess there's kind of like three main categories. There's playtesters, like, people have to sit down and play the game. And I tend to sit down and play the game with people until it gets to a certain point, because it's important to understand how your game works yourself. And feedback from those people is really important for developing the like mechanics and the balancing of the game and things like that, and the experience. I tend not to take as much feedback from those people on things like the visual style. Yeah. Like people have very different tastes and things, and I've got an aesthetic I'm going for, and I tend to trust people that have a background in visual aesthetics more for that. So that like the playtesters are there for streamlining the experience, and then I'm in this office environment with other game developers that I trust to like make big structural changes. Be like, I'm thinking about this kind of thing. What do you think about this? Is this rule clear enough? You understand how to write and read rules. Like, does this make sense? Like if you were going through this stuff, yeah. And they're really good for the art and design aspect of it as well. So like Old King's Crown is being made by Pablo and Andrew and Ken, Pablo's brother. So Pablo's like the visual, artistic, creative side of it, and Andrew is the graphic design side of it. And they're both really, really good. Oh, yeah. So I've got someone there to kind of like help provide advice on either of those two things at any time, which is really nice. And then like the other place I pull feedback from is just like the broader development community. I'm involved with a couple of there's Discord channels. There's like a really cool UK game developers group. There's now an Edinburgh game developers group, which is quite small, but all three of us are in it. And that's nice. And then there's bigger groups on Facebook. I'm part of the Board Game Design Lab group, which is like 30,000 people or something like that. I would say maybe 300 of them are really engaged, but there are a lot of people moving through there and sharing stuff. And all of those are really good venues for getting feedback on on the specifics of game design from people that are designing games that are at different, like, and it's a range of people that are at different stages of their careers in game design as well.
At what point do you go out to those people? And again, maybe it's just because of where I'm, coming at this. Do you like going out? Do you like waiting until a certain point when you before you go onto Board Game Design Lab Facebook group and post something, or do you try out
I'm a big fan of transparency in general. Yeah. Like I love sharing process and bringing people on the journey, and I tend to overshare, and so I seek feedback very quickly. I guess probably there was a lot of good things that the corporate world gave me, and one of them was this fail fast mentality. Sure. Like, make mistakes early, get feedback early so that you can not waste time during your process and get to the good stuff, the meatier bits of the game later.
So do you think that process has changed quite a lot for yourself from Hideous Abominations, first one that you brought through? I imagine your playtest group was maybe slightly smaller for that one, simply because you didn't have this access that you do now, or
but I worked in a big office. So it was just like at lunch, whoever wants to, put it on Slack, who wants to come play test my game for me? So I had like a play test group of 400 people at the Skyscanner office, which was great. So now it's more, but those were, not all gamers and not people that necessarily were interested in it. They were just kind of like around and saw it and were like, oh, can I try what's happening here? But that was a very casual game, so it made sense for a very casual audience to come play test it. So now that I have like a WhatsApp group I use for play testers that I'll ping out and say, hey, I want to try and do a play test this week. Rob's doing the same thing, and just see who's available to come check stuff out. And I try to grow that group as much as possible. Are you in that group, Dougal?
I'm not in that group, but you should invite me to that group. I want to play your games more. No, that's fantastic to hear that you had so many people like at first, because I think that's a big issue for a lot of people who are either just getting into board game design or who have been doing it for a little while, but all on their own, is that getting a good group of playtesters together, either people who know what they're talking about or just a large, vast amount of data from as many people as possible, is a really, really tricky thing.
Yeah.
It's got a bit better particularly with online play, with things like Tabletop Simulator and things like that. But that has its own barrier of entry of trying to get it moved onto that yourself and moving different pieces around.
And it's so slow.
It is.
Like it's a very different experience playing on Tabletop Simulator or Tabletopia than it is playing it. Like I usually it adds about 40% to the length of a game.
Sure.
It's very difficult to gauge exactly what a thing's going to be like when you're only playing it on simulators like that.
Plus the feedback of just people's physical reactions is quite a big thing. It's different from someone saying, yeah, that was great, to seeing them move about in their chair trying to get that move to happen that they're really excited by. It makes such a difference to have something physical in real life. And that was actually one of the things that we was really, really cool, because you brought both Hideous Abominations and Deep Regrets to the shop and did some playtest days there, which was wonderful, seeing people just come into the shop and then look over, and you could tell that they were like, oh, what's this? And then to have you there to actually kind of get some more data yourself, but also improve people's days to try something cool and new, was just amazing to see from the outside.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say. So
speak the news of Ancient Robot.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, so like that. So having places in Edinburgh that I can take things that are outside. So I think you were talking about this like range of data, which is really important. I've got this like group of playtesters, which is nice, but then at a certain point, you need to start putting it in front of people that haven't seen it before, and being able to go. So there's like Ancient Robot is by far the best of the like board game shops in town to take things to.
I'll give you the money later for that. That's very, very kind.
There's a couple of other ones, but they don't have as nice of an environment to suit my taste anyway, or as much space. And then there's a meetup group there's a couple of them actually. There's the Juniper Green board games group. There's the Edinburgh board game. I forget what the name of it is, but they meet. They're not at Grass Market anymore. They've moved, but that's great. So then you're playing with like random people, which is really cool because you're seeing a cross section of the type of people that would potentially play your game. Like an Ancient Robot, you're getting people that are interested in games, but it's a really broad range of interests, right? Like and that's what your audience is going to look like. There's people that are your core audience, and then there's also people that are going to be dragged into it by their friends, and then just like wind up picking it up on a whim that will have a different experience with it than people that like you're specifically targeting with a game, and that's really cool.
So how do you move from the process of, I've got this idea, it's pretty great, it seems to work to me, to be, this is it finished? Like when do you stop? Is this like, hey, I can always add something in. I can always change this. I can always make this perfect. When is the point where you go, I'm calling it here? Is it when you are sick of playing it yourself? Or is it more of a thing of, this feels complete now? Do you get to that point of everything is perfect, therefore I can release it? Or is there more of a kind of push towards finding that middle ground where you're okay enough with it, but you need to get it out?
I have pretty strong feelings about this. So you get this, like, I used to have a poster that I think was from like Facebook's internal team or something that said done is better than perfect. And there's some truth in that. Like, I think that I've heard the phrase used that good is the enemy of great, but I think that great is the enemy of done. And people like really tend to get locked into that trap. So I had to kind of accept that there's going to be a certain level, you're going to miss some stuff, like especially with the manufacturing process happening in China. It's hard to get over there to like press check things. So like Deep Regrets is on boats right now, and there's already 4 mistakes I've found that will be fixed in the next one. So there's like, but like you've gone through the proofreading process several times, and still like, so many people looked at this thing, localizers have looked at it, and still something slips through. Like, just there's not something you don't notice, and you have to kind of accept that that's going to be the case, but that it's still a great thing that you've made. And I think that's a hard thing for creators to do sometimes, because it's like giving birth, it's putting this thing you've been gestating for 9 months out into the world. And it can be really hard to see that happen, to like let go of this thing. 2 things that all creatives I think struggle with are letting things be done and taking feedback. So if you can learn to do those 2 things, you'll be an amazing creative.
So you've learned to do both of these things perfectly.
No,
obviously, that's
not perfectly.
No.
I mean, that's I'm working alone. I don't have to do those things. When I think it's done, it's done. So like it's when it lives up to my standards, I guess. Like I've got a game I've been working on forever called Fright House that I just can't get to a point that I feel comfortable releasing it, and I may never. I really love the concept behind it, but it's just not a fun game in my eyes, and I want it to be not just a pretty thing, but a game that people will play and enjoy. That's not a waste of materials.
When you have a game like that, do you hold that back and keep thinking about it, keep coming back to it every once in a while by yourself, or do you put it out in front of people in a situation or in a context that you don't necessarily like, to include those people in that feedback loop? Or is Fright House like not yet at the stage where you feel comfortable getting people to start playing?
No, it's very far along in development. Like it was the first game I ever started making, and like you hear this story from a lot of board game developers where they just really overreached or bit off more than they could chew with their first game, and that was the case. And I did a lot of art and design for it, so it's much further along visually than it should be for the like amount of polish that the gameplay actually is. And I had it to a point where I was pretty happy with it, and it just got to like it was just way too long, and then anything I tried to do to fix it broke it more. So yes, I'm definitely putting it in front of people. I've been trying things to like change the way it's structured. It needs to kind of start back over from ground zero if I want to do it. We'll see. It's always a good thing to have in the back pocket.
Oh, for sure. So yeah, obviously Deep Regrets is fantastic. Played it lots. Really, really enjoy it. It is coming soon. We're going to have it in the shop, which makes me incredibly excited, to be honest. Cthulhu fishing game is how I describe it to everyone, but there's a bit more going on, and it is truly fantastic. How this came through Kickstarter.
Yes.
You are both of your games have come through from Kickstarter.
Yep.
How do you feel about the whole Kickstarter experience? And is there anything that you would like to kind of put forward to people who are maybe new to board game design, of things that they should know when it comes to that side of stuff? Is it something you're like, I love this is the only way that you should be releasing games? Or do you feel like actually there's some things that you wish you had known before going
how much
to
time have we got? Wow. Okay. So
big question.
First question was, how do I feel about the Kickstarter experience? I love it. I think it's really cool. It's an event more than it is a sales tactic. Like, it's very effective because it's that bringing people along on the journey thing that I mentioned earlier. Like what I trying to get people involved earlier, like by sharing things on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. Well, before Twitter really went down the Sorry, I don't know if we're allowing for language in that. You can bleep that later.
I heard shredder.
Shredder, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Twitter went down the shredder. What was I saying?
Kickstarter.
Elon Musk ruined everything, including my train of thought. the thing that's really nice about Kickstarter is, one, it's expected in the board game industry. So like people know to that most things go through that, either that or another crowdfunding platform. There's like GameFound, there's Indiegogo, less popular backer kits doing their own thing now. There's a couple of options, but Kickstarter is still the most popular, I think. But it like generates momentum that's really nice. And I've done kind of analysis of not using Kickstarter and what that would look like, because with like deep regrets, I was running advertising on Meta, so like on Facebook and Instagram, to direct people to the Kickstarter, and it performed very well when the Kickstarter was coming soon and when the Kickstarter was live. The second the Kickstarter was over and I tried like doing sales, well, actually, this is with Hideous Abomination. Actually, I'm getting my games confused here. So this is Hideous Abomination. The advertising worked well when it was leading up to and when it was live. And then in post, when I tried to just sell it, it didn't work at all. And there's probably a couple things that happened there. One is that people were landing on my website, which is just a Shopify page. And, there's only this one product for sale. So there's like a customer like confidence drop there that you don't get with something that's more well-known like Kickstarter. Yeah. So that's one of the real big benefits of Kickstarter, is that it's a big name that lends itself to credibility to whatever project it is you're working on, which is great. And the momentum is just massive. Like, just, you can compare the performance of any kind of advertising or PR or, podcast that you're doing and how well they perform during a Kickstarter versus like after or before. And it's just infinitely bigger because people, you can feel the buzz around it. It's like, the electricity is going around. They want to be a part of this thing. And that's really cool. I try to take advantage of that too. Like I try to make it a cool experience for people. Like a lot of Kickstarters are kind of rote, where it's just like, okay, the game's done. Here's this. Like, and I try and put humor in there and share cool things and put links to the vessels that are carrying to the game, so people can watch the little arrows drift around the world's oceans and figure out where their game is currently. All kinds of cool stuff.
Great. It's a thing from like a retailer perspective. I find Kickstarter really interesting. As soon as I opened the shop, I was like, I can retail back things. And then that went really badly because, of course, things don't arrive for 3 years until after you've done it. And yes. But now I've got 10 copies coming instead of one that I wanted to play. And I've forgotten what that game's about. But I find it still incredibly engaging. It's an interesting space to be in, that retailer space, because when it comes to Kickstarter, you have that direct contact with the people who are going to have and play your game. You are selling it on Kickstarter. Yeah. They are interested. They have paid the money. They will get the game. Yeah. As a retailer, we're kind of that step in between. Almost, I feel like a full physical shop is very much like Kickstarter, but you can see more things. It's the thing of, you can walk around and see the physical things that are there, and then the customers get it from me. But there's not that direct contact between creator and consumer. Almost, retail shops have become a middleman in a lot of ways, but it's a good middleman to be, because we can point people towards stuff, and it means that there's more visible things in front of people for them to make these decisions and to kind of pick stuff out that looks really good compared to other things that are around it. But Kickstarter it needs to have some buzz before it's even on Kickstarter, I think, to do really well.
I'm very curious about this, actually, the retail perspective on games on Kickstarter, because obviously you've got wholesalers and distributors you can buy a bunch of stuff from, and that you can put on your shelves immediately. Like it's a very transactional situation. How do you approach your budget for things like Kickstarter? It's like maturing whiskey almost. Like you got to wait 3 years for this thing to arrive. You don't know if it's going to. Is there like a certain percentage of your budget that's like for risking on crowdfunding?
So
How's that work for you?
It's a weirdly tricky and surprisingly personal question. I have a problem with Kickstarter, or as maybe the solution is more board games. But I personally have backed too many games, and as soon as I got those retail pledges, as I say, I went into it and I did what I would usually do, which is, wow, that game looks great. I'll look into it a bit more. Oh, wait, I know that designer, or I don't know, but those mechanics look really interesting. I'll give that a go. And then after the first year and not having some of the things turn up, or some of the things being delayed, and then suddenly things turning up and not remembering what it was and having to fish out invoices and all the things to find out how to actually get it on the shelf and how much we actually price it as and all the other bits and pieces. It was a learning experience to the point where I now have completely restricted Kickstarter backing for the shop to much, much smaller than it was originally. It was like the first time when I went to college out of my hometown, 100 miles away, or more, and I was on my own. And what did I do when I had my first student loan come through? Well, I bought sweets for dinner, and I had nothing but sweets for dinner. So this was the same thing. You give me the chance, I will buy all the retail backing, and it was a big issue. So now it's a thing where I'm much more cautious. But I also think because of playing so many games, because of being involved in design and playtesting and all these sorts of things, it's kind of like with anything. The more experience you get, the more you kind of learn what it is that you're really looking for. Yeah. And for me, it is something that is interesting mechanically. It's something that's a bit different. Visuals have to do a lot with it, more so now than when I was just backing for myself. But as a retailer, visuals sell games in a big way. And that has to be a consideration when it comes to what we back in. But I will still go out of my way. And if something looks great, even if it's done by one person in the middle of nowhere that only has 50 backers so far, and I see it and I'm like, oh, wait, they're doing this really cool thing. I'm going to try that and get that in the shop. I do take risks on these things because for me, the most important thing in our shop is not to have every game. It's to make sure that every game that comes in, I know is good. And that doesn't mean good directly for me, but I know what the appeal is for whoever might buy that game. And that is my kind of go-to for any of the games I even get from distributors or anything else like that. With Kickstarter, it's a bit more difficult, but it's still something that I look heavily into. So now I have a bit more restriction attached to myself. I back away and then I'll come back into it and I'll do a huge deep dive on everything that's involved in it.
You kind of answered the follow-up question I had, which is like how much of your like inventory stocking is based on your personal tastes versus what you think will, be the tastes of the masses. They're all good.
Yeah.
But like, what are things that you love and what do you think other people will love?
So I've always, it's one of those things of I could fill the shop with 50 different copies of Monopoly and sell them all.
Yes.
Yeah, but I am not the hugest fan of Monopoly. I think games have moved on a lot since Monopoly.
And you're really going to lose street cred.
No, I still have a copy of Monopoly because people do ask for it. And it is a game that's a touchstone for a lot of people. Totally fine. But I am not there to just sell games and make money. If I can pay staff and I'll do all the costs of running and the cost of the business, I'm very happy because my whole focus is I love games and I want to get more of the things that I think are really cool in front of other people. Also, I'm very lucky in the way that even though I can be quite judgmental against games, I love huge ranges of games. I love the entry-level stuff. Because I'm teaching games an awful lot to people, I love the entry-level stuff that I can teach someone really quickly and see the joy come on their faces. I love the big, long, 4-hour strategy area control games with miniatures because I can sit there with my brother and various other people who I play with and I can really get into the meat of that game. So I have a huge range of games that I really enjoy. But even ones that I don't enjoy so much, if I see why someone else can enjoy it, then I will usually at least try it. And I try and play as many of the games that come through in the shop as possible. But if I can't have the time to play it, which I have less and less of, I will at least look into how it plays so I can describe it to someone who comes in so that they can get a bit of an understanding and not just take a leap of faith because games are expensive. But what really, really helps is not only something that's mechanically different, but something that is beautiful. And I have to say that was one of the things that hit me with deep regrets, as also a big fan of monsters, is how pretty
Who
you made
monsters,
these. Well, right, that's my thing. It's funny, we get a lot of people playing Warhammer 40k and things like that, like big miniatures games that be going on for ages, or D&D, and someone is a human fighter, and I'm like, why? I am not that sort of person. I want to play the weird. Yeah, right. But it's very different for everyone. I totally get human fighters are much better now than they ever have been, by the way. But I adore the art that you've got in Deep Regrets. I think it's absolutely fantastic. How much of the time spent on the game overall.
Wait. Before you do that, I'm going to get some more money to the table here. You were talking about your passion for games. I think that comes through walking into your shop. Oh. And I swear to God, he's not paying me at the table, but I'm going to make him after this is over. So like immediately, like the fact that you don't have Monopoly visible on the shelf somewhere and like that it's such an interesting, you had some of the Let's Summon Demons and what's that guy's name?
Stephen Rhodes?
Stephen Rhodes games, which are really hard to find and seeing those on the shelves, I was like, okay, he's done some research about what's out there and what people want to see. And it was just really cool to see something weird like that on the shelf. So I appreciate that. And I love it. You've got a really well catered collection. Sorry,
Thank you. So it's a somewhat related question for you, Judson. obviously you're a one-man band in the best way possible. When you are like, how important is it for you to be playing lots of new games?
Yes. Also mine.
And also a range of different games. Because I mean, playing, like, your knowledge about just playing games is pretty impressive. But is it because, like, are you a natural just game fan? Are you curious about the mechanics? Is that what's driving you just to try a whole bunch of different things? Are there specific game types that you gravitate towards that you aren't necessarily interested in designing? Or is it always with that kind of view around, how can you learn from this game, not just as much as having fun with it?
Yes. Yes to all of that.
Moving on.
What's the next question?
Yeah.
You mentioned the same thing, that you try to play everything comes to the shop. I rarely play a game twice. I really like, one of my favorite things with board games is learning new games. Something about taking the chaos of something that doesn't make any sense and bringing order to it is really interesting to me. Like trying to suss your way through like the rules and teach other people things. I love that process. And I love seeing the creator's intent come to life. Like I love the experience of experiencing something that I was intended to experience. And once I've kind of done that, I lose a little bit of interest. There's some games that I really enjoy that I'll come back to quite often. But
after you've forgotten
the joy, yeah, exactly, yeah, it's easy to forget a game too. Like it's. You play 10 games and you come back to a game you played 11 games ago and you're like, wait, how did this work again?
It's so funny because I
White
often...
Castle or Ludwig's Castle. Which one was this? I forget.
Yeah. I get constantly... we have, almost 200 games in the board games library.
Yeah.
And I can teach about 97-ish% of all of them. And I constantly get asked, so, wow, how do you remember all the rules from these games? And it's really interesting because I cannot have played something in 7 years and I can pull it back up. And as soon as I look through the rulebook, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's how it worked. That's how it works.
That must be nice.
Oh, it's great. Except the other day, I forgot which toothbrush was mine in my flat, and I had to throw them both out and buy new toothbrushes because I could not, for the life of me, remember
this
toothbrush I used every day. What?
Just share your toothbrush.
I couldn't do that. It would go horribly wrong. Yeah, come on. Please, we're judging you hugely.
Well, it's funny. Like that's that is a superpower. I don't. If you were an X-Man,
the one thing I can do,
you'd have a big BG on your chest, and your thing would be rules checks.
Rules guy. Yeah.
Do you find that when you are playing all these new games, are you maybe this is more a reflection, a self-reflection than a question, but like, are you intimidated? Are you excited? Do you like the idea of having this like wealth of different mechanics that you can like take inspiration from? Like what's the feeling around playing a game, like a great game? I mean, terrible games or games that you just don't like, or you can find a reason not to like them. I think I would imagine is probably quite cool, quite self-satisfying. Yeah. But what about like, a game that you hadn't heard of that you're playing and it's amazing? Does that ever like piss you off?
I think all things in life should be approached with curiosity, right? That's the way you play any game, is just come in with curiosity. It's like you went through that list of things earlier and I said yes, but all of the things you explained were the reasons I play games. One is to find games I enjoy. It's to learn about new mechanics, which kind of go into like the mental inventory of things you could potentially draw upon for inspiration for your own games. It's to see what kind of experiences people are crafting for you. It's to experience new things. Like I like experiencing new things. It's almost like I like travel. And when I travel, I don't go the same places. I'm same with board games. I don't watch the same movies over and over. I always watch new movies. I watch new TV shows, except for very specific ones that I really love and come back to. So I always like experiencing new things. So it's that. Yeah. It's experiencing new things. It's being curious about what's out there and what's going to be different about this one and what they've done that's interesting. And even if it's not the best game, like maybe there's something really cool that they've done with it, and seeing that and appreciating it. Are there games
that you really enjoy, or types of games that you really enjoy playing that you do not necessarily see yourself designing? Because I will say Deep Regrets and Hideous Abominations are pretty different. In terms of their game, not only their gameplay, but as a one-man band, you could do anything you want. You can do a cartoon horror party game if you want to, like, right? But like,
are you looking through my diary?
I'm not. No. Background research. But are there types of games that you play or that you enjoy playing that you aren't interested in potentially making?
I'll tell you, the thing that terrifies me is asymmetry. And again, I love it in games. I think it's a really cool, like the game that just absolutely floors me every time I play it is Villainous, Disney Villainous.
Yeah.
Like it's far better than it had any right to be. Have you played it? I know Dougal has.
No,
so
I've
it's,
read about it, yep.
It's licensed IP stuff, but there's a lot of love goes into it. Like the art's beautiful because, it's Disney money, but they've got ones for Marvel and all this stuff now. And they all kind of like I think you can play the Marvel ones with the Disney ones. Do they all interact? Because it's all the same core mechanic of getting influence or whatever.
Not sure, because they've gone with that asymmetry building over time.
Yeah.
The more sets that they make of it, the more different the mechanics are that come into it. So I think some of them can, but I would hesitate to play some with other ones.
Even if you just look at the Disney ones, like the Disney Villainous set, there's what, like 20 different characters you can play as now, and each of them has not just a different like objective, but a different whole set of mechanics. Like you're kind of playing your own game, and there's a lot of player interaction, but you're interacting with them through their own decks. So there's like I feel like there must be some incredible spreadsheet that somebody puts together to make sure that there's exactly enough friction between each of the different mechanisms that it's always a very close game, despite each player playing an incredibly different game from the others. Like it's just so well balanced and so asymmetrical, and that baffles the mind. Mm-hmm. Like trying to think about how I would approach designing something like that just gives me stomach ache. I'm not going to mess with that.
The interesting thing is you mentioned balance within the asymmetry. I find it really interesting when it comes to balance ideas of what does balance mean to a game designer, because in my mind, balance means anyone can do well with what they've got. And it should be, well, here's the thing. Is it rubber banding, is it not, or is it actually this needs to be mechanically, so it does come down to that last turn, no matter how someone plays? Or should it be everyone has equal opportunities, but if someone is playing better, they will still win? That balance side of things, I think, is just an incredibly interesting subject, particularly from game designers who, when I have spoken to them, all have different opinions on it. What's your opinion on game balance as a general theme?
So, it's a spectrum, isn't it? I don't like stuff that's too polished. I don't like, so Villainous is different because it's so wild mechanically. It doesn't really feel like it, when it comes down to one turn between everything, it feels like a fluke every time. It's like, how did we get that close? Where there's some games that are like so well balanced that it's always just the slightest mistakes can ruin your game. Mm-hmm. If you're playing with a lot of people that understand the game really well, like Earth or what's the other? Arc Nova. Oh, both of those games are very well balanced. Yeah. They're very Euro. There's not a lot of luck involved in them. And most of the time, if you know what you're doing, it's a very tight game, and like small mistakes can just ruin it for you. And I don't like that degree of balance. I like enough luck in a game where it feels like anyone could win, even if they don't know how to play necessarily, so that like new people coming into the game feel like they have a fair shake at it, even if they're playing against a seasoned pro. So I kind of fall in the middle somewhere. I don't like really, really luck-based stuff, and I don't like really, really finely tuned Euro balancey stuff. I like the Ameritrash.
I mean, it's a really good place to be in between those things. I mean, with Deep Regrets having that kind of push your luck mechanic, that is how you create that. Well, it could be what you think it is, or it might be something that's going to ruin you if you are willing to risk it. And it means that if you are sitting behind, you might have to push your luck with that side of things, but it could bring you back into the game, which is just, it's a really interesting mechanic to bring in for that balancing side of things. Like
the way I approach it is to make a system of balancing for all the cards within the game, so they all kind of find they follow a specific, like with Magic cards, there's a cost associated with things, and it's it's been calculated so that it's not too powerful for the cost. I like that approach in games where it's like all of the elements have been designed with balance in mind. There is some randomization into what you are given or get in a game, and you have to kind of mitigate your luck based on what hand you're dealt, literally. And I really like that kind of balancing thing. I was going to say something else, but I've lost my train of thought. I'll come back to it.
That's Elon Musk again. What a jerk he is. It's getting involved.
I think there's also this kind of thing between like a big wins versus small wins. And if you're thinking about what your players are going throughout that journey, I do think that can mitigate a little bit about whether or not something is targeted, like really tightly balanced or not. Like if you figure out that you're falling behind, but you are able to feel like you're having little micro wins, that doesn't feel as bad. I think Deep Regrets does this quite well because you have different opportunities. Every single day is filled with different opportunities for you to get really pissed off with yourself, or you're like, oh, I got that. Yeah. That was really cool. Even if yesterday was terrible. So even if I know I'm probably behind, and then it starts to get surprising in other ways, right? Yeah. But even if it didn't have that other element to it, I think the idea of having the tiny little dopamine hits is quite helpful. So then if you're worried about rubber banding, rubber banding is, I think, a challenge that, because if it's too tight, it's just not going to be fun. It's going to be like an algorithm. Anyone can play it, and everyone will always end up in the same end game. But it's games like Villainous, I guess, in terms of how you're designing it. But even if it is that way, but it's still entertaining, who cares?
Yeah. It's, just to explain to our listeners, if you don't understand the rubber banding concept, it is if someone gets too far ahead, that something else can pull the person who's losing back into the race, essentially, for the game.
Catch-up mechanics is another way of describing that.
Or limiting.
Sure. I remember what I was going to say, and it kind of follows on from what you were talking about, Rob, is that like one of the mechanisms I really like is push your luck, but I like to try and make it feel like a sense of danger more than pushing your luck, and that's hard to do in board games. I take a lot of inspiration from video games in this. Like I'm a big Soulsborne fan. I play Dark Souls and things like that, and I love that those games allow you to just kind of wander around and get yourself in way over your head. Yeah. And I want to I like to try and give people the opportunity to do that with board games. Deep Regrets is kind of that. You can just like wade in and just like really bite off way more than you can chew from like a fishing perspective and do something you can never possibly, you could ruin your game by doing that. But I love that you have the choice of doing that. You can self-sabotage. I played another game recently, which is on Kickstarter right now, called Fame and Fable by Owen Davies, a really cool illustrator. This is like his first game he's made. It's absolutely gorgeous, but it's similar to Deep Regrets in that like you're like fighting monsters, but you can kind of choose to fight a simpler one. There's like some that are face up that you get to choose from, or you can take one off the top, or there's like these elite monsters. And when I played it, I was just like running into a brick wall fighting these elite monsters and having a blast doing it. I was losing every time, but like it was just such a fun experience being able to try and take on more than I could definitely more than I can handle, which was great.
You're talking about like motivations for playing games in the first place. Like I remember watching an interview with someone who's playing, I've forgotten the game, but they were looking at motivations for why somebody wants to buy or play a game, and I think it was about harmonies. It was about harmonies, and they were like,
I've not played harmonies.
Yeah, but they're like, I just like making trees, or I just like making these things, and you might lose. It's okay. I'm having my little meditative time. And there are more people than you'd think that actually just enjoy the game for that. And you shouldn't design it for that. Like you shouldn't design it to optimize that way, because then you'll end up with games that look pretty but are terrible. But it's just a really interesting other point in terms of like people play games for different reasons.
So many, and seeing more and more people coming in wanting cozy game, essentially a game that you are playing that may or may not have player interaction, that might be essentially you're playing against someone else, whoever has the most points wins, but at no point do you do anything that affects what the other person is doing, is still a valid way to enjoy games. And I always want to kind of push that side of things of there is literally any way to enjoy games. It's such an open industry now and so much more accessible than it ever has been, with the idea that there's games about planting trees in a very pleasant way. There's games that are incredibly aggressive and brutal about planting trees, like photosynthesis. There are so many, really good game, but so aggressive. There are things about making quilts. There's stuff about brewing beer. There's games about dungeon crawling through a horrifying dungeon with monsters at the end as fantasy people. There's a game about dressing up to go through a dungeon so you can date your way through the monsters. There's literally, it's called Dungeon Date. It's fantastic. There are so many ways to enjoy games now that it's really interesting to talk to game designers about what their specific thing is. And when you say like this threat idea about the push your luck thing, that will turn some people off because they don't want that like tension feeling in the game they're playing. They want that cozy feeling. There's a game that always comes back to my mind. It was a good game, but not one I would bring out to everyone, which is called Nyctophobia, where everyone was wearing a blindfold except the murderer, and you felt your way through a plastic forest, essentially, trying to move your piece to pick up different things. And the only person who saw what was happening on the board was the murderer, who then would try and chase you down. So you could feel your piece with a little kind of cross on top.
But the murderer is pretending they are also blindfolded.
Yeah. No, not at all. The murderer knows what's going on. They can see where you're going, and you're feeling your way through it.
Is it like
you
a
know
werewolf?
who the murderer is?
You do, right? Okay.
There's no secret rolls or anything else like that.
Jason Voorhees situation, just slowly stalking you down.
So what? Yeah, exactly. And the murderer is the person who, like, when it's your turn, they put your hand on your piece so that you can start it, and you are using that like risk reward. And there's something about the, oh God, I can't see, I'm stuck in a dark forest, I have to feel my way through. Do I move another step through the thing, or am I going to touch something else in this maze of forest that has been built by this crazed murderer? That feeling of threat I haven't had in many other games, but I think that is a really interesting thing that can be done within board games that can't really be done in every board game, but it can't be done in other mediums as well in quite the same way that you have an attachment
to. That sounds amazing. I've not heard of it.
It's really interesting.
Sounds like the kind of game I would need to buy, because communal blindfolds sounds a little terrifying.
It is.
I guess you could bring your own blindfold to the game.
Yeah.
We all have
one. You've been wearing one the entire time, Gelb.
Exactly.
We've been doing this podcast.
Right thing.
Thank goodness. I find the monsters in Deep Regrets are gross as could be. They are fantastic. I
like the
love
mermaid.
how gross they are. Yeah, the mermaid, absolutely delightful. How do you feel like there's ever something that you could draw for one of these games and you're like, you know what? That's too far. I need to pull that back, because that is gross and threatening, but it's too gross and threatening for what I'm trying to be.
Yeah, I do. I have like a playful threshold, I guess. Like I'm trying to inhabit this space of like cartoonishly spooky, which I think is criminally unpopulated. Like, you know, Scooby-Doo is my main touch point. Like, nobody doesn't like Scooby-Doo, and I don't see why there's not more stuff in that vein. Most of the like horror board games you get tend to be really like Nemesis. You know, it's like very self-serious, really, really grim artwork, and anything that is cartoonish in the like horror or spooky space is made for kids. And I want to do this stuff that's like for adults, works well for slightly younger audiences, but not like children, but it still has a cartoonish aesthetic to it. So it's like the Rick and Morty crowd, for lack of a better touch point. So yeah, like, and there is, like you mentioned the mermaid, it does have some nudity in it, but they're like technically udders, not breasts. And I that did come up with a backer contacted me. It was like, this is a little disturbing. Have you considered changing the artwork? I was like, it's in there. Like, if you don't like that, you're probably not going to like the game, because it involves cannibalism and drinking. And,
keep your blindfold on, like, Gelb. So it's all very uncomfortable.
Oh my God, I'm shaking.
So yeah, like I try and say, like, it needs to stay playful. It needs to be like clear that it's either gross and icky to look at, but not, I don't like gore very much. I do have a little bit of gore, but not like overly bloody things. Mm-hmm. I like creeping people out without necessarily relying on
like
on
goo.
Gore. Goo. Yes.
Goo, not like
Nickelodeon.
Gore.
Spooky.
Yeah, like pus coming out. That's not bloody, but.
Well, if you're interested in all of that, Deep Regrets is coming into Ancient Robot Games at some point very soon, if it's not there already by the time this episode is out. Thank you so much for joining us, Judson.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you for listening to our usual board game rambles. Very, very kind of you. I've been Dougal from Ancient Robot Games.
And I've been Gelb.
And this has been edited by Ryan Scott. Thank you very much, and I hope you all have a great day.